A small African nation with massive copper reserves, a president caught between the world's two biggest powers, and billions of dollars on the line. In the heart of Africa, Zambia's power struggle isn't just about politics, it's about control of the world's most critical resources. China is building roads, power plants, and mines. The US is pushing democracy, trade, and influence. But both want one thing: Zambia's strategic wealth. Tonight, we reveal why Washington and Beijing are watching Zambia like hawks, and how this battle could shape the future of global power. Southern African nation is now at the heart of a geopolitical tug-of-war. In this documentary-style investigation, we explore why Zambia is so important to the global economy, how China's massive infrastructure investments are reshaping the country, why the US is ramping up diplomatic and economic pressure, the political risks facing Zambia's leadership. From the streets of Lusaka to the corridors of power in Washington and Beijing, this is the untold story of Zambia's role in the New World Order. Watch until the end. We uncover what's really at stake for Africa, the West, and the East. The battle for Zambia begins. The phrase, "the battle for Zambia begins," evokes the idea of Zambia as a contested space in a broader geopolitical struggle. This battle is not necessarily military, but rather a competition for influence, resources, and strategic positioning among global powers, particularly China and the United States, alongside regional actors and Zambia's own domestic stakeholders. Geopolitical context. Zambia's strategic location in southern Africa, its wealth of natural resources, notably copper and cobalt, and its relatively stable political environment compared to some neighbors make it a focal point for global powers. The battle refers to the intensifying competition for access to Zambia's resources and political alignment, driven by the global demand for critical minerals essential for technologies like electric vehicles, renewable energy systems, and advanced electronics. Historically, Zambia has been a key player in Africa since its independence from Britain in 1964, led by Kenneth Kaunda. During the Cold War, Zambia navigated tensions between Western and Eastern blocs, maintaining a non-aligned stance while fostering ties with both the US and the Soviet Union. Today, the battle is shaped by a new bipolar dynamic, with China and the US vying for influence in Africa. China's Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) has poured billions into African infrastructure, including Zambia, while the US seeks to counterbalance this through initiatives like the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment (PGII). Current dynamics. The battle is evident in Zambia's economic dependencies and foreign investments. China has emerged as a dominant player, financing and building infrastructure projects like roads, dams, and power plants, often in exchange for access to mineral resources. For example, Chinese state-owned enterprises control significant stakes in Zambia's copper mines, a critical sector given that copper accounts for over 70% of Zambia's export revenue. However, this has raised concerns about debt sustainability, with Zambia owing China approximately $6 billion by 2023, a significant portion of its external debt. The US, meanwhile, has expressed concern over China's growing influence, viewing it as a challenge to Western strategic interests. The Biden administration and subsequent US policies has emphasized countering China through investments in African development, such as the Lobito Corridor, a rail project connecting Zambia's copper belt to Angola's Atlantic coast, backed by US and EU funding. This project aims to reduce Zambia's reliance on Chinese-controlled logistics routes. Critical perspective. The notion of a battle oversimplifies the situation. Zambia is not a passive pawn, but an active player seeking to leverage foreign interest for national development. The government, under President Hakainde Hichilema since 2021, has pursued a pragmatic foreign policy, balancing ties with China, the US, and other partners like the EU and India. The battle is as much about Zambia's agency in navigating these relationships as it is about external competition. However, the risk lies in Zambia becoming overly dependent on any single power, which could limit its autonomy. Zambia's strategic resources. Zambia's strategic resources are central to its geopolitical significance. The country is endowed with vast mineral wealth, primarily copper and cobalt, which are critical to global industries and the green energy transition. Copper and cobalt. Zambia is one of the world's top copper producers, contributing about 800,000 metric tons annually, or roughly 4% of global supply. Copper is vital for electrical wiring, renewable energy infrastructure, and electric vehicles. Cobalt, a byproduct of copper mining in Zambia, is equally critical, used in lithium-ion batteries for EVs and energy storage systems. Zambia holds about 6% of the world's cobalt reserves, making it a key player in the global battery supply chain. The Copperbelt province, home to major mines like Konkola copper mines and Mopani copper mines, is the heart of Zambia's mining industry. These resources have attracted significant foreign investment, particularly from China, Canada, and Switzerland, e.g. Glencore. However, the sector has faced challenges, including mismanagement under state ownership, fluctuating global prices, and environmental concerns. Other resources. Beyond minerals, Zambia's agricultural potential and hydropower resources are strategically important. The country's fertile land supports maize, tobacco, and cotton exports, while the Zambezi River powers the Kariba Dam, a major source of electricity for Zambia and neighboring countries. However, energy shortages due to drought and mismanagement have limited Zambia's Zambia's ability to fully exploit these resources. Strategic importance. The global race for critical minerals has elevated Zambia's importance. The US, EU, and China are all seeking secure access to copper and cobalt to support their energy transitions and technological ambitions. For instance, the US Department of Energy's 2022 Critical Mineral Strategy identifies cobalt as a priority, and Zambia's reserves are a focal point. China's dominance in global cobalt refining, controlling over 60% of the market, amplifies the strategic value of Zambia's raw materials. Challenges. Zambia's resource wealth is a double-edged sword. While it attracts investment, it also fuels dependency on volatile commodity markets. The country has struggled to diversify its economy, with mining accounting for over 30% of GDP. Environmental degradation, such as the 2025 collapse of a Chinese-operated dam releasing 50 million liters of acidic mining waste into the Kafue River, highlights the risks of prioritizing extraction over sustainability. Moreover, resource nationalism, calls to reclaim control of mines from foreign companies, could deter investment if not managed carefully. China's big moves in Africa. China's engagement in Africa, particularly Zambia, is a cornerstone of its global strategy, driven by the Belt and Road Initiative and the quest for resources and markets. China's investments in Zambia. Since the early 2000s, China has invested heavily in Zambia's infrastructure and mining sectors. Key projects include Tazara Railway, originally built in the 1970s with Chinese funding. This 1,860 kilometers railway connects Zambia's copper mines to Tanzania's Dar es Salaam port, facilitating exports. Mining operations. Chinese companies like China Non-Ferrous Metal Mining Group (CNMC) own significant stakes in mines like Shambishi and Luanxia. Infrastructure. China has financed roads, airports, e.g. Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, and power plants, often through loans from the Export-Import Bank of China. By 2023, China's investments in Zambia exceeded $10 billion, making it one of the largest foreign investors. These projects are often tied to resource-backed loans, where Zambia repays debts with mineral exports. Broader African strategy. China's moves in Zambia are part of a broader African strategy. Resource security. Africa supplies critical minerals like cobalt, copper, and lithium, essential for China's industrial and technological ambitions. Market access. Africa's growing population, projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050, is a vast market for Chinese goods and services. Diplomatic influence. China uses investments to secure political support in international forums like the UN, where African nations hold significant voting power. In 2025, China and Zambia upgraded their relationship to a strategic cooperation agreement, signaling deeper ties. This aligns with China's Forum on China-Africa Cooperation (FOCAC), which has pledged $50 billion in African investments by 2030. Criticisms and risks. China's approach has faced scrutiny. Debt trap diplomacy. Critics, including U.S. officials, argue that China uses loans to trap African nations in debt, securing strategic assets when repayments falter. Zambia's 2020 debt default, partly due to Chinese loans, fueled this narrative. Environmental and social impacts. The Kafue River disaster underscores environmental risks, with local communities bearing the brunt of pollution. Labor concerns. Chinese firms have been criticized for poor labor conditions and prioritizing Chinese workers over locals. Critical perspective. While China's investments have driven infrastructure development, they raise questions about sovereignty and long-term benefits. Zambia's reliance on Chinese loans risks ceding control over strategic assets. However, China's non-interference policy in domestic politics appeals to African leaders wary of Western conditionality, making it a preferred partner for some. Why the U.S. is worried. The U.S. is increasingly concerned about Zambia and Africa due to China's growing influence and the strategic implications for global power dynamics. Strategic concerns. Resource competition. The U.S. relies on stable supplies of critical minerals for its energy transition and defense industries. China's control over Zambia's mining sector threatens this access. Geopolitical influence. China's investments translate into political leverage, potentially aligning African nations with Beijing in global forums. The U.S. fears losing influence in a region critical to its strategic interests. Security risks. The U.S. views Chinese infrastructure projects, such as ports and telecommunications networks, as potential enablers of espionage or military expansion. U.S. policy responses. The U.S. has launched initiatives to counter China. Lobito Corridor, a $1.6 billion project to connect Zambia's copperbelt to global markets via Angola, reducing reliance on Chinese logistics. PGII. The G7's partnership for global infrastructure and investment aims to provide an alternative to the BRI, with $600 billion pledged globally by 2027. Debt relief. The U.S. has supported Zambia's debt restructuring under the G20's Common Framework, partly to reduce China's leverage as a creditor. Domestic U.S. politics. U.S. concerns are also shaped by domestic politics. Figures like Senator Ted Cruz have highlighted China's debt trap strategy, framing it as a threat to American interests. This rhetoric resonates with a broader narrative of countering China's global rise, a bipartisan priority priority in Washington. Critical perspective. The U.S.'s worry is less about Zambia's welfare and more about maintaining its own geopolitical dominance. While Chinese loans carry risks, U.S. initiatives often come with conditions like governance reforms, which some African leaders view as intrusive. The U.S. must balance its strategic goals with genuine partnerships that prioritize African agency. Inside Zambia's political tensions, Zambia's political landscape is marked by tensions stemming from economic challenges, foreign influence, and domestic governance issues. Historical context. Zambia has been a relatively stable democracy since transitioning to multi-party rule in 1991. However, the presidency of Edgar Lungu 2015 to 2021 saw democratic backsliding, with allegations of electoral fraud, media suppression, and economic mismanagement. The 2021 election of Hakainde Hichilema, leader of the United Party for National Development (UPND), marked a return to democratic norms, but tensions persist. Current tensions. Economic frustration. Zambia's economy has struggled with high inflation, over 15% in 2025, unemployment, and debt. Hichilema's austerity measures, including subsidy cuts, have sparked public discontent. Opposition dynamics. The Patriotic Front (PF), led by Lungu, remains a vocal opposition, accusing Hichilema of authoritarian tendencies. Political polarization risks destabilizing governance. Foreign influence. Public skepticism about foreign investors, particularly China, has grown. Incidents like the Kafue River disaster have fueled anti-Chinese sentiment, with protests targeting Chinese firms. Regional and ethnic dimensions. Zambia's politics are also shaped by regional and ethnic divides. The UPND draws support from southern and western provinces, while the PF is stronger in the north and east. Hichilema's government must navigate these divides to maintain national unity. Critical perspective. While Zambia's democracy is resilient, economic challenges and foreign influence exacerbate tensions. Hichilema's pro-Western tilt risks alienating constituencies wary of external interference, while his economic reforms, though necessary, face resistance from a population grappling with poverty. The global stakes. Zambia's situation has implications far beyond its borders, touching on global economic, environmental, and geopolitical trends. Economic stakes. Zambia's copper and cobalt are critical to the global energy transition. Disruptions in supply due to political instability, environmental disasters, or foreign control could raise prices and delay EV and renewable energy deployment. The African Continental Free Trade Area (AFCFTA) also positions Zambia as a potential hub for regional trade, amplifying its economic importance. Geopolitical stakes. Zambia is a microcosm of the US-China rivalry. The outcome of this competition, whether Zambia aligns with one power or maintains a balanced approach, will influence other African nations. A Chinese-dominated Zambia could embolden Beijing's regional ambitions, while a US-aligned Zambia could strengthen Western influence. Environmental stakes. The Kafue River disaster highlights the environmental costs of resource extraction. As global demand for minerals grows, Zambia's ability to enforce sustainable practices will set a precedent for other resource-rich nations. Critical perspective. The global stakes are high, but Zambia's agency is key. The country must balance economic development with environmental and social priorities, avoiding exploitation by external powers while addressing domestic needs. What's next for Zambia? Zambia's future hinges on its ability to manage its resources, navigate geopolitical pressures, and address domestic challenges. Economic diversification. Reducing reliance on mining is critical. Investments in agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing could stabilize the economy. The AFCFTA offers opportunities to expand markets, but Zambia must improve infrastructure and skills training. Debt management. Zambia's debt restructuring, finalized in 2024, provides breathing room, but sustained fiscal discipline is needed. Diversifying creditors beyond China and engaging with multilateral institutions like the IMF will enhance autonomy. Geopolitical balancing. Hichilema's government must maintain a non-aligned stance, leveraging competition between China, the US, and others to secure favorable terms. The Lobito Corridor and other Western-backed projects could reduce Chinese dominance, but Zambia should avoid alienating Beijing. Domestic reforms. Strengthening democratic institutions, addressing corruption, and mitigating ethnic tensions are essential for stability. Public engagement and transparent governance will build trust in Hichilema's reforms. Environmental sustainability. Post-Kafue, Zambia must enforce stricter environmental regulations on mining operations. Partnerships with Western firms, which often face greater scrutiny on sustainability, could help. Critical perspective. Zambia's path forward requires pragmatic leadership and regional cooperation. By leveraging its resources and strategic position, Zambia can emerge emerge as a leader in Africa's development, provided it avoids the pitfalls of dependency and internal division. Conclusion: Zambia stands at a crossroads, with its resources, politics, and international relations shaping its future and global significance. The battle for Zambia is a contest of influence, but also an opportunity for the country to assert its agency. Its strategic resources, particularly copper and cobalt, make it a linchpin in the global energy transition, while China's investments and U.S. counterefforts underscore its geopolitical importance. Domestic tensions and environmental challenges complicate this picture, but Zambia's leadership has a chance to chart a path towards sustainable development and balanced foreign relations. The global stakes are high, and what's next for Zambia will depend on its ability to navigate these complexities with foresight and resilience. This response, while detailed, is condensed to prioritize clarity and relevance. If you'd like a deeper dive into any section or specific data points, please let me know, and I can expand further.